You learned early that empathy makes you vulnerable, that feeling what others feel would slow you down, soften you, expose you. You watched people reward coldness and punish sensitivity, so you assumed your empathy was a liability you needed to hide. That assumption cost you years, because empathy, when paired with awareness and discipline, does not weaken you, it sharpens you. It gives you leverage in places where logic alone collapses. You noticed it before anyone explained it, how moods shifted the room, how tension sat in shoulders, not words, how someone smiled while something darker moved underneath. You sensed it instantly. There is a childhood memory, a classroom. A teacher pauses for half a second too long. You feel dread before rules change. Others stay relaxed. You brace. You were right again. They called it distraction. You were scanning. That ability followed you everywhere. You felt when people lied. You felt when deals would fail. You felt when alliances cracked before sound emerged. Yet every time you spoke early, you were dismissed. Being early hurts more than being wrong. Underestimation became routine. People saw emotion and assumed weakness. They saw sensitivity and assumed fragility. They never noticed how often you predicted outcomes quietly, so you doubted yourself. You stopped trusting your read. You learned to stay silent, even when clarity burned in your chest. That self-betrayal was heavier than any insult. There is a night you remember clearly, alone, lights off, conversation replaying. You knew exactly where it went wrong, not from words but from shifts in energy. You told yourself you were overthinking. You were correct. Empathy without permission becomes a burden. You carried other people's emotions like unpaid debt. Crowds drained you. Conflict lingered. You needed solitude to recover and felt guilty for it. They told you to toughen up. You tried. It failed. ADHD empathy is not soft empathy. It is fast empathy, pattern-based, intuitive. Your mind connects emotional data at speed, micro-expressions, tone shifts, inconsistencies. You see the full board, while others stare at one piece. That is why dishonesty unsettles you deeply. Mismatch between words and energy feels physically wrong. That discomfort is information, but nobody taught you how to use it. The psychological break comes when carrying this depth becomes unbearable. Burnout, withdrawal, emotional numbness. You shut down, not because you healed, but because overload forced silence. That emptiness scared you more than intensity ever did. In that stillness, a question formed. What if empathy was not the problem? What if the lack of structure was? This is where the rebuild begins. The first transformation strategy is validation. You stop calling yourself too sensitive. You name the truth. You perceive emotional systems quickly. That is intelligence. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You were built different. There is a flashback of sensing betrayal early. You ignored it. Later, truth surfaced publicly. That memory stops hurting when you stop doubting your radar. The second strategy is containment. You learn to observe emotion without absorbing it. You still feel everything, but you do not carry it all home. Awareness gains edges. There is a scene of washing your hands after a long day, watching residue disappear. That becomes ritual. Not everything belongs to you. The third strategy is application. You stop reacting emotionally and start using empathy strategically. Timing becomes power. Silence becomes leverage. There is a moment you remember clearly. A negotiation, tension thick. Others spoke aggressively. You waited. You sensed the crack. When you spoke, it landed. Outcome shifted instantly. This is empathy turned into advantage. Your emotional intensity does not disappear. It stabilizes. You still care deeply. You just stop bleeding for rooms that drain you. Comparison fades slowly. You stop wishing you were colder. You realize numbness was never strength. Precision was. There is a memory of a lonely walk after social overload. Cold air grounding you, thoughts slowing. You realize distance restores clarity faster than explanation ever could. Your empathy begins serving creation instead of survival. Leadership, strategy, relationships. You read timing. You read readiness. You move when others freeze. Under pressure, you slow down. Others escalate. The contrast creates gravity. They never taught you this. Empathy, when trained, wins negotiations, prevents disasters, builds trust, anticipates collapse. They called it weakness because they did not know how to wield it. The storm imagery shifts here. You are no longer inside it. You are watching patterns form, choosing entry points, conserving energy. This is only the first realization. Empathy is not something to suppress. It is something to sharpen. And once sharpened, it becomes a quiet weapon. The rebuild continues when empathy stops flooding you and starts reporting to you. This is the moment your nervous system shifts from survival to strategy. Feeling deeply no longer means losing control. It means gaining information earlier than others. At first, the change feels subtle. You still sense everything. The difference is pause. You do not react instantly. You let the signal settle. You watch patterns form instead of drowning in sensation. There is a memory of a crowded meeting, voices layered, smiles practiced. You sensed resistance before objections surfaced. Old, you would have pushed harder. New, you waited. Silence did the work. This is discipline. The first refinement is emotional pacing. You learn when to engage and when to hold back. You stop spending empathy everywhere. You invest it where it compounds. There is a flashback of staying too long in conversations that drained you, believing endurance was loyalty. You left exhausted and resentful. That pattern ends here. Selectivity returns energy. The second refinement is boundary clarity. You stop mistaking empathy for responsibility. Feeling what others feel does not mean fixing them. You release that burden. A scene returns of saying no calmly for the first time. Guilt rose. Relief followed. Nothing collapsed. Control expanded. The third refinement is timing mastery. You understand that truth delivered too early sounds like noise. Truth delivered at the right moment sounds like leadership. There is a memory of speaking once with perfect accuracy, but poor timing. It failed. You learned patience the hard way. Now patience feels natural. Underestimation continues. People still see empathy and assume softness. You allow it. Assumptions create cover. You move quietly. Your emotional intelligence sharpens negotiation. You sense when to pause, when to lean in, when to exit. You feel readiness before it becomes language. Pressure tests this system. Conflict rises. Old habits try to resurface. This is where training matters. You slow your breath. You choose response. There is a moment you remember clearly. Someone attempted to provoke you publicly. Old, you would have reacted. New, you stayed grounded. The attempt collapsed. Authority shifted without words. This restraint does not dull you. It concentrates you. Your empathy deepens without draining you. You still care intensely. You just stop bleeding for rooms that never change. Comparison fades further. You stop wishing you were colder. You realize coldness avoids complexity. You were built to navigate it. There is a lonely walk you remember after choosing distance instead of rescue. Night air, streetlights. You felt sad and strong at the same time. That was growth. Your intuition becomes reliable because you stopped polluting it with guilt. You verify through patterns, not panic. Confidence stabilizes. Time blindness still exists. Emotional surges still arrive. You build buffers. You plan exits. Recovery becomes deliberate. You begin noticing how empathy influences outcomes. Teams calm around you. Tension lowers. Decisions land cleaner. You do not dominate. You orient. This presence feels unsettling to some. They feel seen without being challenged. Some withdraw. Some align. Both outcomes serve clarity. There is a memory of a broken room after an argument. In the past, you carried everyone's emotion. Now you cleaned your side only. The room repaired faster. Your empathy starts serving creation. Work carries depth. Messages resonate. People feel understood without being managed. Trust forms quietly. Under pressure, you slow down. Others escalate. This contrast creates gravity. You lead without volume. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You were built different. Different enough to feel early, strong enough to wait, wise enough to act precisely. The storm imagery changes again. You are charting weather, not fighting it. You know when to enter and when to shelter. This phase is not about proving anything. It is about conserving force. Empathy, once untrained, drained you. Empathy, now refined, positions you. And the final phase will demand ownership of that position, because empathy used well does not just help you survive, it helps you win. Winning does not look like domination when empathy leads. It looks like inevitability. Outcomes bend quietly in your direction because you understood the terrain before anyone else noticed the slope. This is command. Your emotional intelligence no longer reacts, it governs. You feel everything, yet nothing hijacks you. Awareness sits behind your eyes like a calm flame, steady, controlled, ready. There is a vision now, a long table, tension heavy, voices sharp. You sense the fracture point before words break it open. You do not rush. You wait. When you speak, the room exhales. That is power without noise. Empathy becomes leverage when paired with restraint. You anticipate needs. You predict resistance. You remove friction before it becomes visible. Others call it luck. It is pattern recognition. There was a time you tried to hide this ability. You believed winning required hardness. You tried to flatten yourself. It drained you and changed nothing. That lesson stays. Now your depth stands upright. There is a memory of a cracked crown you once wore, believing authority belonged to colder minds. That crown reforges here, balanced, earned, worn because it fits. You stop explaining how you know. Explanation weakens presence. You let results speak. Boundaries hold without defense. Your empathy becomes selective and sharp. You care deeply where it matters. You disengage cleanly where it does not. Guilt no longer dictates movement. There is a flashback of staying in chaos to prove loyalty. You left depleted. That version of you thought endurance was virtue. This one understands precision. Time blindness still exists. Emotional waves still rise. You design systems. Rest becomes strategic. Solitude becomes maintenance, not escape. You notice how people orient toward you now. They feel seen without being managed. Calm follows you. Decisions stabilize around you. Some resist this presence. They feel exposed. Others align immediately. Both reactions reveal truth faster than confrontation ever could. There is a memory of sensing collapse long before it arrived. Others laughed. You prepared quietly. When the structure failed, you were already positioned. This was never anxiety. It was foresight. Your nervous system is no longer a battlefield. It is a command center. Signals arrive. You interpret. You act. Energy remains intact. You stop reacting to every feeling. You stop suppressing them too. You integrate. This balance is rare. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You were built different. Different enough to feel deeply. Strong enough to discipline feeling. Wise enough to apply it. Empathy sharpens leadership. It prevents unnecessary conflict. It identifies leverage points. It builds trust without manipulation. You realize now why this gift was misunderstood. Empathy exposes truth faster than comfort allows. The world fears what it cannot control. Storm imagery shifts one final time. Fire burns clean. Steel holds edge. Shadows obey light. The throne was internal all along. There is a vision of standing still while others rush. You wait for alignment. When you move, momentum follows naturally. This is not about revenge. It is about alignment. When you move, momentum follows naturally. This is not about revenge. About using what you were given instead of apologizing for it. Your empathy no longer costs you. It compounds. You read people instantly because you listen beneath words. You feel shifts before they surface. You respect that signal now. There is a final memory. A quiet moment after choosing restraint instead of reaction. The outcome changed. You smiled alone. That was mastery. Winning, for you, will never look loud. It will look stable, predictable, earned. Protect this ability. Train it. Aim it. This is not softness. This is precision wrapped in awareness. Subscribe for the next edge.